Today, you're going to learn how to ask better questions in conversations. And I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Julian Miravel. We recently wrote a book together called Positive Communication for Leaders. It's built around a 6-part model that Julian created years ago, and we've recently written this book around it. And we're also doing a video series around it. This is video number 3 in a 7-part series on each of the individual behaviors in that model. And we're going to get right to it today about how to ask good questions. So your first step as a leader is to commit to asking more questions. Julian, why should we ask more questions?
Well, for leaders, asking questions is so important. It immediately puts you in a position of discovery. And as leaders, we just tend to get into the habit of just telling people what to do. We give lots of directives, and we acknowledge that there's a time and a place for sharing information in that way. But what makes questions so powerful and so much more effective is that they engage people and they get the leaders to be placed in a position of discovery. And as a leader, questions immediately accomplish that goal and help you really lead to concrete positive outcomes. Here's some facts that Alex and I really like. One of them is this: only 6% of all acts of communication are actually questions. But 60% of what we say is actually in response to a question. In other words, questions are exponentially more engaging than just making statements. And research shows that once we ask a question, our minds almost entirely focus on trying to answer it. So what makes questions powerful, Alex, is that when you ask a question, you set in motion what the next turn of talk is going to be about, what other people are going to say, and that's going to shape what the interaction is all about. Good questions will give followers and colleagues an opportunity to voice their opinions, but it's also going to show them that you care about their views and about them as people.
Asking questions is a fundamental leadership behavior. In fact, there are lots of benefits to asking questions versus simply making statements. In fact, the benefits are really hard to believe. So simply by asking more questions, here's what you benefit from. Individuals who ask questions and listen deeply are more likely to be perceived as leaders. Leaders who ask meaningful questions for input are seen by others as increasing effectiveness. Leaders who ask meaningful and respectful questions create more encouraging work relationships. And leaders who ask good questions successfully motivate their employees. So given all of these benefits, we're asking you, start asking more questions in the next 24 hours after watching this video. And the more questions you ask, the more repetitions you'll get, and you will get better at this the more you do it. So the second tip, in addition to asking more questions, is to improve the quality of the questions you ask. Julian, how can we do that? How can we ask better questions?
So what we show in the book and what we really want you to learn in today's video is how to flip your questions, to move from asking closed-ended questions to asking open-ended questions. And there's a big difference. Open-ended questions typically start with words like how, what, or why. Closed-ended questions tend to start with words like are you, will you, did you. And you'll notice that closed-ended questions control and narrow the interaction versus open-ended questions, which kind of give it an expansiveness, right? A breadth of answers. Let me give you a scenario. So you come to work on a Monday morning, you go see a colleague, and you ask, did you have a fun this weekend? And the person may say, yeah, how about you? And you notice that's a closed-ended question. Did you have fun this weekend? And the answer you got is very short. In fact, you've learned nothing about your colleague, what they enjoy doing, or even about their weekends. Closed-ended questions can be acceptable as a starting point, but you notice that for leaders, they need to learn to ask open-ended questions because that's where the connection is, and that's where you can learn from other people. So take the same situation. It's a Monday morning. You go to work to see a colleague. What if instead of asking, did you have a fun weekend, you flip the question and just ask, what did you do this weekend? And you'll notice the person may respond with something like this. Oh, I did all sorts of things. I went to the beach on Saturday with my family. Then on Sunday, we cooked a great meal together. And they may share even more information. And the more they share, the more you'll learn. And the more you'll learn, the more you'll have understanding. And that's what you want as a leader.
Open-ended questions virtually always lead to a more robust conversation then closed-ended questions. So here are some sample open-ended questions that you can ask your followers. Here are the questions you might ask to discover what your followers think, for example. What is your opinion on this? How do you feel about X? What do you see as the next steps? Here's some other samples you can ask your followers if you want to discover more about them outside of their role at work. You could ask, tell me your story. What are some of your personal and professional goals? Who are your role models? When do you feel truly energized and engaged at work? I recently asked one of these questions when I was out to dinner with Julian. We were both presenting to a client in another city, and the client took us out to dinner the night before our presentation. And after we ordered our food, we had some time to talk, and I simply asked each of our hosts, tell me your story. And they said, well, what do you mean? What story? And I said, your whole life story. And for the next 45 minutes to an hour, the four of us went around and basically told our life story, short versions of our life story. In fact, one of the people went back about 400 years to when their ancestors first arrived in the United States. And you could feel as the conversation went on, we were discovering the unknown about each other, and our relationship was deepening with each talking turn. It was really a fantastic conversation. And the person the next day mentioned what a powerful interaction it was. So, Julian, why don't you tell us about the next steps for this video?
Yeah, we'd like you to take a few next steps. And the first one is, if you have used a great open-ended questions that has worked for you, put it in the comments below so we can all learn from each other and have lots of examples of great open-ended questions to open up our conversations with others. But the second thing we would like you to do as a next step is to commit to asking more questions, better questions, and more open questions in the next 24 hours. We want you to feel and see the difference if you move from asking closed-ended questions to asking open-ended questions in your interactions. So specifically, what we'd like you to do is go meet with a follower or a colleague or an employee and ask them 3 meaningful, open-ended questions to position yourself in a mode of discovery. Make this whole intention about getting to know them and getting to understand their perspective and their worldview. And you'll notice that when you do that, something really magical happens in the interaction. As we say in our book, it's up to leaders to position themselves to ask better questions and to discover what people have to say. And when you do that, you're going to experience something completely different in the realm of your relationships, both even at work and at home.
This is the third video in this series of 7 for communication for positive leaders. We encourage you to stick with the entire series. We're going to post all of the videos once they're all posted out there in the expandable description below the video. You can also sign up for the free mini email class that mirrors what we're going through in these videos. And of course, you can pick up a copy of our new book at Amazon. Links to all of that are in the description below. We look forward to reading your comments. And in the next video, we're going to work on how to give compliments, another key behavior for positive leaders. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.